So can you see this presentation?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. See, in this particular course, we will discuss about basic principles of urban design and the foundation on which urban designers design the spaces, urban spaces, and urban infrastructure, right? So, before getting into those basic principles of urban design, let's try to understand what is urban design. So, any idea about urban design? How do you define urban design? Throw your basic understanding of design and urban with these two words. Anyone want to comment? What is urban design? Throw your basic understanding of design. किसी को कुछ आइडिया है क्या? Okay, किसी को कुछ भी नहीं आइडिया है. ठीक है. See, when we talk about these two terms, urban and design, these are some examples of pictures that comes to our mind, right? That huge buildings, large scale projects, good quality roads, transportation, landscape, huge water bodies, green areas, parks, recreational areas. All these concepts come to our mind when we talk about urban design. Because when you talk about design, yes, it is related to design of a product or design of a space. But when you talk about urban design, it is a little different from product design or normal architectural design, because the scale is different in case of urban design. Now, we need to understand why cities were built, because urban design or urban designer deals with the design of cities or the design of urban areas. So why the inputs of an urban designer is required to design a city or a design of an urban space? So to understand this, let's understand this first, that why cities were built. So if you see the history of city building or city designs, it has a very long history, right? So starting from the Indus Valley civilization, we have examples of in Chinese civilization, we have examples of Mesopotamian civilization, we have examples of Greek civilization, Roman civilization, where we could see all those properly planned cities with good quality buildings, good quality roads, proper drainage layouts, and all. If you see the examples of Indus Valley civilization, 2500 years back, they have got good quality roads, drainage layouts, proper water distribution system. So the planning of cities or design of cities, the practice of designing of cities was is very old. So why the cities were built? Because once people started to get civilized, people need a systematic and planned way of living life. They wanted a systematic way of living life. If you see the difference between a rural area and an urban area, you'll see those differences. How a city life is better in quality than the life in a rural area. So I have included these points that people need a better lifestyle in a city. They get good infrastructure in terms of buildings, in terms of roads, in terms of services. They get better transportation system. They get better income generation opportunities. They get well designed community spaces, parks. So all these things they get in a city. This is why they need a systematic way of living life. So if you talk about a person who is uh, living in the rural area and a person who is living in a city life, you'll get to see the difference. How he walks, what he wears, what he takes in his food, how he talks. I mean, everything is different, right? The clothing pattern of a villager and the clothing pattern of a person who is staying in an urban area is totally different. So people needed a better and systematic way of life So people started to design cities, and people started to design civilized way of planning their settlements. So I'll not get into the all the details of urban design today. This is a basic introduction class for urban design. So if you see the difference of a rural area and an urban area, the rural area are more of an organic development. If you see the buildings, they are very organic in nature. If you see the roads, they are very organic in nature, and the growth of a rural area is also organic. Whereas in case of an
सर
urban area, yes,
आप स्लाइड्स चेंज कर रहे हो सर?
huh,
हो नहीं रही है सर यहाँ पे.
okay, let me check.
सर स्लाइड शो पे नहीं जा रहा है, पर वो अभी ये नॉर्मल पे दिखा रहा है, वाई सिटीज वर बिल्ट.
ओके ओके ठीक
सर
है
आप फुल स्क्रीन कर दीजिए.
ठीक है. अभी हो रहा है क्या चेंजेस?
हाँ सर, अभी हो रहा है सर.
यस सर.
ओके
हाँ,
ओके
सर.
ठीक है. So see, when you talk about urban design, these type of images comes to our mind, right? Use buildings, transportation, roads, high quality uh, green areas, parks. So we have discussed these things. The white cities where people need a better lifestyle. They get good infrastructure in cities. They get better roads. They get better transportation system. They get better income generation opportunities. They get well-designed community spaces, parks, etc. So these are some regions why cities were built when they started to get civilized. Okay, so let's see the difference between the rural area and an urban area. So we have discussed how rural settlement is more of an organic in nature, and in case of an urban settlement, it is planned. It is a planned settlement or planned development. So in case of rural areas, we get very poor infrastructure, poor buildings, poor roads, poor transportation facilities, poor public spaces. Why I am writing poor public spaces and poor this word poor, because all these are not properly designed or properly not properly maintained spaces. And on the other side, in case of an urban settlement, we get better roads, better infrastructure, better transportation facilities, better public spaces. So you could see the difference how a rural setup or a rural settlement is more organic, and in case of an urban settlement, it's very planned or systematic settlement. So if you do the if you see the summary of urban design, so urban design is the process of designing and shaping cities and towns. So urban design is concerned with arrangement, appearance, and function of suburbs, towns, and cities. See, design, when we talk about design, we can define design as an outcome or also as a process. Those so the same theory or the same pattern applies here in urban design also. It is both a process and an outcome of creating localites in which people live, engage with each other, and engage with the physical place around them. So in both the ways we can define urban design also as a process or as an outcome. Once we design the space and what we get as a final outcome, we can also call it urban design, and the process through which we get the final outcome, that process is also called urban design. So urban design involves the arrangement and design of buildings, public spaces, transportation systems, services, and amenities. Urban design is the process of giving form, shape, and character to groups of buildings, to whole neighborhoods, and a city. So, what does this urban design means? Urban design means it is the process or the process of designing buildings, public spaces, designing transportation system, services, and amenities. Got the point? What is urban design? Now see, if you see the first image and the second image, the first city is the city of London. The second city is the city of the Ghat of Varanasi. So you could see some difference how these two city looks. So this is the responsibility of the urban designer who design a city. When we talk about Varanasi as a city, there are different perspectives connected with the city of Varanasi. The perspective of religion, the perspective of human life and death, the perspective of different shape of building, temples, Hinduism, the concept of immorality. So all these perspectives are related or connected with the city of Varanasi. Whereas if you see the city of London, we have very high quality lifestyle, high quality buildings, glass facades, good quality roads, high quality transportation system, information sharing system. So if you see that difference, and that has to be there, that difference has to be there, different uh, in the design of two different cities. If we design Varanasi this in the same fashion that we have designed London, then it won't be it that Varanasi city won't get the identity that it stands for. So that identity needs to be maintained by the urban designer. It is the responsibility of the urban designer to maintain the character of the city, to maintain the identity of the city. They have to talk about they through the design of urban spaces, through the design of buildings, through the design of transportation system, through the design of roads, ghats. We have to talk about people. We have to talk about the culture of people. That we have to talk about the language of people. We have to talk about the lifestyle of the living people in a particular city, and it is the sole responsibility of the urban designer. So this is the basic reason why two different city looks different, and it has to be different. Otherwise, the people of London will not visit Varanasi to experience it, or the people of Varanasi will not visit London to experience it. So that difference has to be there to maintain the character, to maintain the identity, to maintain the culture. So all these things are different perspectives of designing urban spaces and urban settlements. So these are three different terms: architecture, urban design, and urban planning. And a lot of people just get confused with these three terms, whether these three terms are similar or these three terms are different, or the job of an architect or job of an urban designer or job of an urban planner is same or it is different. See, we cannot distinguish or we cannot separate these three terms: architecture, urban design, and urban planning. We cannot separate these three terms individually. These three profession, or these three responsibilities are related to each other. We cannot separate them, but still there are some areas where architect only focus, and in some particular area only urban designer focus, and in some particular areas which exist where only urban planners focus. So in that way, in what area one focus, in that way only we can separate these three terms: an architect, an urban designer, or an urban planner. So when we talk about architecture, we have already completed 3 years of architecture course. So I hope you now you have a better understanding of architecture and architects. So basic architecture means design of a single building, maybe a few couple of buildings uh, connected to each other, but it is basically talks about the design and the construction of individual buildings when you talk about architecture. But when we talk about urban design, it is the art of making places for people. So in contrast to architecture, which focuses on the design of individual buildings, urban design deals with the larger scale of groups of buildings, street, spaces or public places, neighborhoods, districts, entire cities with the goal of making urban areas functional, attractive, and sustainable. In case of architecture, or an architect design an individual building, whereas an urban designer designed a whole settlement, designed a whole city. An urban designer doesn't design a building. An urban designer design a city. An urban designer design the relation between the building and the outdoor spaces. An urban designer designed the relation between a building and a park, a building and a streetscape, a building and the public plazas. So it is the responsibility of the urban designer to create the relation between all these spaces. So these are some terms which are related to urban designers. When an urban designer design an urban area or urban setup, he has to talk about the imageability of the area. He has to talk about the legibility of the area, streetscape, public squares, human scale, enclosures, linkage, urban vision, quality of public realm. So we have just discussed how Varanasi is different from the city of London. So that imageability, how a new visitor has got an image of a city. So that image or that imageability of that particular urban space has to be given by an urban designer. It is the sole responsibility of an urban designer to maintain the imageability, to maintain the character, to maintain the culture through public spaces, through urban spaces. Legibility, streetscape, human scale, enclosure. So all these terms are related to urban design. So and again, when we talk about urban planners, they focus on, apart from urban design. See, urban design is always a part of urban planning. But apart from urban design, urban planners also focus on transportation planning. They also focus on policy making or policy planning, land use planning, economic development, housing, disaster management. So these are few examples of areas where urban planners focus. Apart from these areas, we have few more areas where urban planners actually focus on when they design an urban setup. So they have important role on policy making. They have important role on transportation planning and transportation management of a city. What which road should lead to where, which nodes should place where, which landmarks should be located where. So all these things need to be properly planned by an urban planner. Policy planning, then land use planning. So you will get to understand land use plans when you will involve yourself in your urban design projects. So land use plan actually talk about uh, in a particular area which zone is allotted to what type of activity. If it is a residential setup or residential activity is happening in a particular area, that part is totally dedicated to residential use. And if some part is um, I mean, commercial activity is happening, so that part is dedicated to commercial activities. So this is how a city or a urban setup is uh, divided into different zones: residential zone, commercial zone, mixed use zones. So all these things need to be properly planned by an urban planner. They also talk about the economic development. Urban planners talk about economic development, whereas an urban designer or architect doesn't talk about economic development. They also focus on housing, disaster management. So all these are some areas where urban planners focus on. So if you see the role of an urban planner also discuss the plan with an landscape architect. An urban planner also discuss the plan with an urban designer. An urban planner also discusses a plan with a civil engineer. An urban planner also discusses his plan with a sociologist. An urban planner also discuss his plan with an architect, business sector, economic development planner, citizen, and the community who will going to use that particular plan or a particular setup. So this is how the job of an architect or the job of an urban designer and the job of an urban planner is different in nature. Though we cannot separate these three terms, but still there is a slight difference between these three jobs and three responsibilities. So I hope you have understand how an architect is different from an urban designer, and an urban designer is how is different from an urban planner. So if you see the summary, the scale, an architect only talk about an individual building, whereas in case of an urban designer, spaces between buildings, street, park, transit stop, and urban planning whole neighborhoods, district, and cities. Orientation, aesthetic and functional. Aesthetic functional also in case of urban designer, and in case for an urban planner, the utility is the main focus. Treatment of space in case of an architect, 2D and 3D. In case of an urban designer, mostly in 3D, and in case of an urban planning, predominantly two-dimensional. And a time frame, no definite time frame for an architect, for an urban designer, 5 years or less than 5 years, or for an urban planner, it's 5 to 20 years. Because when you see the master plan of a city, a master plan of a city has to be a design or planned for 20 to 25 years. So this is how the job of an architect and the job of an urban designer and the job of an urban planner is little different in nature. So this was the introduction, basic introduction about urban design and the difference between architecture, urban design, and urban planning. I hope you have got the points properly. Any doubt?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay,
No, sir.
good. ठीक है.